Hey everyone, in this lecture, I'm going to talk about the 3 personas that will give you success as a physical therapist. And understanding each work persona will give you clarity so that you understand which role specifically you should be in as a physical therapist. And I'll tell you this, there's one particular persona that most physical therapists fall into, but you can also morph along the way and be in a different work persona depending on your skill set and desires. Let's dive right in. Okay, so again, in this lecture, we're going to talk about the 3 personas that are going to dominate the profession of physical therapy and most professions. But specifically, we're going to talk about each one of the personas so you can figure out exactly where you're at and which role you would fall into the best. So anybody that knows me knows that I love basketball. So I'm going to use basketball as our means to tell this story of the 3 personas. Okay. Now I'm from Chicago, so I'm going to use the Chicago Bulls. And in this photo here, what you'll see is the tale of 3 personas. All right. We have Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest basketball player of all time, Jerry Reinsdorf, who is the owner of the Chicago Bulls, and Phil Jackson, who is the head coach of the Chicago Bulls. So let's talk about each one of these people and the personas that they embody within their particular work environment. And then we'll take it back and go through which one of these works for each physical therapist. So what is a persona, right? I'm sure you guys are asking yourself that. What is a persona? Well, basically, it's a personality that a person projects in public, all right? So whichever work and persona you embody is basically going to help you determine which role you should be in. Okay. Sometimes that means you're going to be a staff physical therapist. Sometimes it means you're going to be an owner. Sometimes that means you're going to be a manager or a leader, right? Someone in a clinical director position, all right, or vice president, something like that, right? So understanding what work persona you embody will help you maximize your success in your career and ultimately maximize your potential for income. So why does this matter, right? Well, there's a picture here of Jerry Krause. Now, you didn't see that in the first photo, but Jerry Krause was the general manager for the Chicago Bulls. So he was underneath Jerry Reinsdorf, and he became in between Jerry Reinsdorf, which was the owner of the Chicago Bulls, Phil Jackson, and the team. Now, you'll notice it says nobody cheers for Jerry Krause. And that's because Jerry was a great manager and very good at his job, but he was not a leader. And that's why eventually it fell apart. But during the time that they were successful, he was a great manager, despite people not liking him. So I go back to physical therapy now. How many of you work for a boss that's a poor leader? I can tell you right now, I've worked with many, okay? Horrible, horrible leaders. But there's also been some that are really, really great leaders, right? My current boss right now, he's the owner of our company. He's a phenomenal leader, right? He knows how to take each person that is in the organization and get the most out of them and understand their personality and their intrinsic motivations. And that's really what a leader is about, is maximizing each particular employee's skills and desires. How many of you work for a boss that shouldn't be a director, right? I'm a clinical director right now. I have to constantly ask myself, am I being a manager? Am I being a leader? How am I trying to improve my staff? How am I trying to meet their needs along the way, right? Because everyone has a different persona, but also a personality. And then how many of you would probably be better suited for a manager position versus an employee position, right? There's plenty of you out there that should be in a manager role or a clinical director role, or maybe even an owner role versus a W-2 employee. So let's dive into each one of these personas and understand that, right? So again, there's 3 options, right? I told you that earlier. Skilled producer and artist, manager, leader, and entrepreneur, risk taker. Now you'll see this picture to the left, well, my left. You have Phil Jackson, a bunch of the Chicago Bulls, and you have Jerry Krause. Okay, they're all in different levels within the organization of the Chicago Bulls. So in this case, we're going to talk about each one of these options of personas, and then you can figure out where you fall now and where you need to be. And maybe that's the same role you're in, or maybe it's a different one. All right, the skilled producer. So this is the first one. The skilled producer / artist is pretty much your general physical therapist. Okay. This is where most physical therapists fall into. Okay. The majority of them do. All right. And that's someone that's a very, very strong talent, meaning that they're very good at the job that they're supposed to do. All right. So they consistently meet the needs of the job in a sustainable way. So what does that mean for physical therapists? That means that they're a physical therapist is able to meet the needs of their clients, meaning patients, in a sustainable way to produce a plan of care, treat them, and improve their outcomes. That is what we do as physical therapists. All of us are skilled producers. Okay. Now, that being said, there's different categories and levels to being a skilled producer. All right. You'll see in this picture here, you have Michael Jordan and Steve Kerr. They're both on the same team. They both won a championship within that team, but they're very different levels, right? Michael Jordan is definitely an A player. Steve Kerr is like a B or a C player, right? So again, in each organization, there's A players, B players, probably a few C players, but sometimes they want to have less of the C players and more of the A and B players. The difficult part is that having too many A players may be too expensive. So again, as a skilled producer, you can make a lot of money if you're an A player. However, it depends on the organization's specific business plan. For example, let's say that an A player makes $100,000 and a B player makes $90,000 and a C player makes $80,000. As you can see, there's a big gap between A and C. But an A player, a B player, and a C player in a traditional insurance model, if they all see the same amount of patients per day, they still generate the same amount of income. And that's the problem with the physical therapy profession. Now, if you're in an out-of-network or cash-based model, maybe that's different depending on the way the organization's set up and the other expenses. So skilled producers can make a lot of money. However, if they're an A player, sometimes they have to morph themselves to take on additional responsibilities, or they have to generally see the same amount of people all the time or more people, which is what's happening a lot of times in these outpatient centers, which is becoming mills, right? Where there's just lots of patients that are being brought in so that those A players can continuously kind of what they call turn and burn, right? Constantly see more people to bring more income so that the organization grows. So again, most physical therapists fall into this skilled producer category, and they can make a lot of money or they can make a little bit of money. You'll see a lot of organizations just bring in new grads because they're cheaper. And they might start as a C or a B player and hopefully work their way up the ranks to an A player. But A players generally have more opportunities than B and C players because they're better at their jobs, right? So again, figuring out where you are helps you understand your role within a company and the organization and figure out if that's the right role and the right organization for you. Let's dive into the next one, the manager leader. So you'll see a picture of Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan here. Phil Jackson was arguably the best leader and head coach during his time, right? Especially in the 90s. So again, head coaches are an example of, let's say, a clinical director, right? Or a manager. Now there's a difference between being a manager and a leader. But generally a manager leader consistently manages and meets the needs of those skilled producers so they can continue to do their job in a sustainable way. So their job is to really just support the physical therapist, right, as a clinical director. They don't always have leadership skills, right? Again, I'm sure you guys know this, right? There are some directors, all right, even some owners that are good managers, but not good leaders. And that really comes down to culture and understanding who your employees are if you're in that role, right? So leaders will have management skills most of the time, or they need to produce those, right? So generally, right, this is going to be someone that has potential to make more income, right, in the physical therapy world. Now, in this particular scenario in basketball, right, a head coach like Phil Jackson might make some money compared to a C player in the on the team, right, a Steve Kerr, but he's not going to make more money than the A player. And that's just the way that basketball, it's a business model is set up. In physical therapy, it's similar but different. Similarly, where clinical directors sometimes make more money, but sometimes they really don't because they have more responsibility. So there's a closer margin there with a skilled producer physical therapist. However, there's also a lot of potential for them, right? So generally they will make a little bit more money, but they're adding responsibilities, which makes them more valuable to that organization. just like a head coach that is a good leader can get more out of his skilled producers to win a championship, and therefore that meets the organizational's goals. Now, a risk taker / entrepreneur is someone more like Jerry Reinsdorf, who was the owner of the Chicago Bulls. So they're really the creator of the vision, right? They're supposed to attract and effectively engage those leaders and managers. Oftentimes they have to cultivate those leaders and managers, right, to help them become a leader. Now, the attributes of an entrepreneur risk taker is that they have high risk tolerance in business and are willing to take a significant amount of personal risk to start something, right? So he probably had to pay millions of dollars to start the Chicago Bulls or buy them, right? Similar to a private practice owner who's starting a business, right? They take all the risk, high potential for reward, but a lot more responsibility because now they have to be in charge of everyone from the top all the way down. And that's where they have to be really good at managing along the way. They have to work with managers and leaders in those roles to build a system that constantly empowers those skilled producers to meet the needs of their customers consistently. So in a physical therapy world, outpatient center, owner, clinical director, and physical therapists. Physical therapists are generating income for the business, similar to a clinical director who most of the time has to see patients as well. And owners sometimes do, sometimes don't. Unfortunately, in physical therapy, they usually do just because of the margins. They're very slim. So, but this is really where there's a separation and understanding that if you build that system and it's a nice, cohesive culture, it will grow. If it's toxic, somewhere in between, typically at the general manager or the clinical director role, that's where things start to fall apart. But this can also fall apart at the top here. All right. Now, some of you are just born entrepreneurs. Some of you are intrapreneurs. Some of you are managers, and some of you are skilled producers. However, you can morph along the way. And let's talk a little bit about those. So there's 3 pictures here, right? We have the same people we just had in those previous pictures. Now, if we go to the top one to the right where Phil Jackson is, Phil Jackson was actually a skilled producer first. He was a professional basketball player for the New York Knicks. He wasn't a very good one, but he wasn't a horrible one. And he did okay there, but he thrived as a manager leader, meaning a leader manager for him. He was a true leader. So I say leader manager first. And he was a great head coach. Now, when he tried to take a step up to become a general manager of the New York Knicks, didn't really do a great job. Now, there's also some different reasons for that, right? The organization plays a massive role. And that's why it's so important to find the right organization as a physical therapist, because you might be in the right role, but in the wrong organization. Or you might be in the right organization, but the wrong role. And this is why it's so important to understand these personas and the skills and attributes that are required for all of them. Now, Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest skilled producer of all time, I would agree. Best basketball player of all time. As an owner, did not do a great job. Had the income from being a skilled producer to be able to be an owner of the Charlotte Hornets, but didn't do a great job of figuring out how to cultivate a leader like a Phil Jackson in those head coach positions or find the right skilled producers. So again, sometimes changing roles isn't the best thing for you, right? Even if you have the ability to. It's figuring out what's best for you. Now, Jerry Reinsdorf, he's always been an entrepreneur risk taker. He's never changed roles, right? He started his own tax attorney company, all right? He became an owner from the beginning. Once he made enough money, he bought the Chicago White Sox and the Chicago Bulls. As a result, he's been very successful because that is what he embodies. That's his persona. He found the right people to put in the right jobs. And that's where being an entrepreneur or risk taker and also a leader is so important, to be selfless enough to let the system work and to find the right people. And as a result, he's had 6 championships for Chicago Bulls, and he's even won a World Series with the White Sox. So again, which one are you, right? Understanding these personas can really help guide you to the right roles and organization, hopefully. Or just take a step back to look at, where am I at now? Where do I need to be? Or am I in the right role? So understanding each role should give you clarity on how to maximize your income. You'll see this picture here, Steve Kerr, right? He was the skilled producer that I said it was a B or C player, right? He's actually a better leader manager as a head coach. He's one of the most successful head coaches. And he makes good money now. Now, he made good money as a, as a player as well, but he's a better manager or leader manager than he was a skilled producer. So again, people can morph roles, change roles constantly. Understanding your best work persona will give you clarity. All right. Now, if you're not sure about that, if you're wanting to learn more about yourself, right, check out the 16personalities.com. We use that to interview people, right? We understand their persona. We understand their personality, what drives them, their workplace habits, things like that, because understanding your people around you in each organization is crucial to the right culture and the right buttons to push, as Phil Jackson would do, or Steve Kerr, to get the most out of everyone around you. So I really encourage you to take a look at this, understand what persona you embody the most, and then from there, make the right decisions to enhance your career and hopefully maximize your income. Thanks for watching today.